The Ultimate Warrior was a hero. He wore bright colors. He had long hair and paint on his face. Kids loved him. Adults cheered for him. He ran to the ring like a rocket. He shook the ropes. He beat the bad guys. He was magic on TV. But behind the curtain, something else was happening. The man inside the costume was out of control. WWE tried to manage him. They tried to control him. They could not. This is the story of 5 real moments when the Ultimate Warrior lost it for real. These are not stories from the script. These are moments when WWE had no power over him at all. The name on his birth certificate was James Bryan Hellwig, but the world knew him as the Ultimate Warrior. He burst into WWE in the late 1980s. He looked like a comic book character come to life. His body was huge. His energy was wild. He screamed into the camera. He talked about destiny and power. Fans ate it up. Vince McMahon saw dollar signs. Warrior became WWE champion at WrestleMania 6 in 1990. He beat Hulk Hogan. That was supposed to be the passing of the torch. Warrior was supposed to be the next big thing, but things did not go as planned. Warrior had a temper. He had an ego. He thought he was worth more than WWE paid him. He thought he deserved respect. Sometimes he was right, sometimes he was not, but the way he handled things made people angry. He did not follow the rules. He did not listen to the veterans. He did not care about making friends. He only cared about himself and his character. This made him dangerous. When you cannot control a star, the whole show falls apart, and Warrior fell apart more than once. Professional wrestling is built on control. The promoter controls the story. The promoter controls the money. The promoter controls who wins and who loses. In the 1980s and 1990s, Vince McMahon was that promoter. He ran WWE like a king. Wrestlers were supposed to do what they were told. They were supposed to show up on time. They were supposed to wrestle who they were told to wrestle. They were supposed to lose when they were told to lose. Most wrestlers followed these rules. They knew if they did not, they would be fired. But Warrior was different. He thought the rules did not apply to him, and sometimes he was able to prove it. The first time WWE totally lost control was in the summer of 1991. It was right before SummerSlam. This was one of the biggest shows of the year. The main event was huge. Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior were teaming up. They were going to fight 3 bad guys together. The bad guys were Sergeant Slaughter, General Adnan, and Colonel Mustafa. The storyline was about patriotism. It was right after the Gulf War. America had just fought Iraq. The story played on that. Hogan and Warrior were the American heroes. The bad guys were Iraqi sympathizers. Fans were excited. Tickets were sold. The pay-per-view was advertised everywhere. Posters were printed. Commercials were running on TV. Everything was set. Then Warrior decided to blow it all up. 7 weeks before the show, Warrior wrote a letter to Vince McMahon. The letter was dated July 10th, 1991. It was not a friendly letter. It was a list of demands. Warrior wanted more money, a lot more money. He wanted $550,000 just to show up at SummerSlam. He said WWE owed him that much from WrestleMania 7. He said his paycheck from that show was unfair. He said it was total bullshit compared to what Hogan got. Warrior did not stop there. He wanted his merchandise money to go up. He wanted the same cut Hogan got. He wanted more money from house shows too. House shows are the live events that are not on TV. Wrestlers got paid a percentage of the ticket sales. Warrior asked for 4 to 5% of the net. He made sure to say no other wrestlers should get paid more than him. He also wanted more time off. He wanted 4 days off every other time. In 1991, wrestlers were on the road 300 days a year. Asking for that much time off was almost unheard of. He even wanted the same money Hogan got from the 900 hotline. That was a phone number fans could call to hear messages from wrestlers. It cost money to call. The wrestlers got a cut of the profits. Warrior wrote in the letter that he had sacrificed enough. He said he had given up things in his personal life. He said his physical well-being was suffering. He said for the last 5 years, he had meant as much or more to the company as Hogan. He said his compensation did not match his value. He said he had been different from the others since day one. He was right about that last part. He was different. Most wrestlers would never dare send a letter like this, especially not right before a huge show. But Warrior did not care. He had leverage. He knew Vince needed him. If Warrior did not show up, the main event was ruined. Fans would be angry. The pay-per-view would fail. Vince would lose millions. Refunds would have to be given. The relationship with the cable companies that carried the pay-per-view would be damaged. Warrior had a gun to Vince's head. He knew it, and he pulled the trigger. Vince McMahon read the letter. He was furious. In wrestling, this is the biggest sin you can commit. You do not hold up the promoter right before a show. It breaks trust. It destroys the business. Holding up a promoter means threatening not to perform unless you get what you want. It is like blackmail. The promoter has already sold tickets. The fans are expecting to see you. If you do not show up, the promoter looks bad. The fans get angry. The whole business suffers. But Vince was stuck. He could not cancel the main event. The financial damage would be too great, so he did something he did not want to do. He agreed. Vince wrote back to Warrior. He said okay to the $550,000. He said okay to the royalty increases. He said okay to the schedule changes. He even said okay to the house show percentages. He agreed to make Warrior the highest paid wrestler in the company. Vince made it sound like he was trying to be a friend. He said he had tried to speak as a friend before, but Warrior did not hear. He said he tried to speak as a professional, but the direction always got changed. Vince sounded like he was giving in. He sounded defeated, but he was not really giving in. Vince was buying time. He needed Warrior to wrestle at SummerSlam. Once the show was over, the power would shift back to Vince. Warrior did not see the trap. He thought he won. He thought he had beaten Vince at his own game. On August 26, 1991, Warrior showed up at Madison Square Garden in New York. He got dressed in his gear. He put on his face paint. He put on his tassels. He ran to the ring with his usual explosive energy. The crowd went wild. They had no idea what had happened behind the scenes. They just saw their hero. Warrior teamed with Hogan. Together they beat Sergeant Slaughter, General Adnan, and Colonel Mustafa. The match went exactly as planned. The show was a success. Fans left happy. The pay-per-view made money. Everything looked perfect. But the second Warrior walked back through the curtain, reality hit him like a truck. Vince McMahon was waiting. Vince did not hand Warrior a check for $550,000. Instead, he handed him a letter. It was a suspension. Warrior was fired, effective immediately. Vince got what he needed. The show was over. The money was made. The fans went home satisfied. Now Warrior had no leverage. Vince refused to be held hostage. The agreement that Vince had signed was made under duress. Vince never intended to honor it. He just needed to get Warrior through the curtain and into the ring. Once the match was over, Vince had the power again. Warrior was sent home. He stayed under contract until late 1992, but he never wrestled for WWE again during that time. He was frozen out. His power was gone. Vince had flipped the script. Warrior thought he was in control. He was wrong. This moment became the most famous example of a wrestler trying to bully the boss and losing. Warrior's reputation was destroyed. Other wrestlers saw him as greedy. They saw him as a snake. They saw him as someone who put himself above the business. Management saw him as unreliable. They saw him as a mercenary. Even though Warrior felt he deserved more money, the way he went about it made him the villain in the eyes of the locker room. In wrestling, loyalty to the business is supposed to come first. You are supposed to do what is best for the show. Warrior put himself first. That was unforgivable to many people. But from Warrior's point of view, he was just standing up for his value. He was just demanding what he thought he was worth. The problem was the timing. The problem was the method. And the problem was that Vince McMahon was smarter than him. The second time WWE lost control of Warrior was different. This time, it was not about money. It was about respect. It was about safety. And the man who had to fix it was not Vince McMahon. It was Andre the Giant. In the wrestling world, the locker room has its own rules. These rules are not written down. They are passed from generation to generation. Veterans enforce those rules. If a young guy gets out of line, the old guys teach him a lesson. If a wrestler is working too rough, someone will hit him back to wake him up. If a wrestler is being disrespectful, someone will put him in his place. Andre the Giant was the biggest veteran of them all. He was a legend. He had been wrestling since the 1960s. He had traveled the world. He had worked with everyone. He commanded respect just by walking into a room. He was also in a lot of pain. By the late 1980s, Andre's body was breaking down. He had a disease called acromegaly. It is also called giantism. It made him grow too big. His skeleton could not support his weight. His bones hurt. His back was a mess. His knees barely worked. Every step was painful. Every match was agony for him. But Andre still showed up. He still performed. And he still demanded respect. He believed in protecting your opponent. He believed in working safe. He believed that wrestling was a cooperative art. Both men had to take care of each other. The Ultimate Warrior did not believe in any of that. Warrior's style was all speed and power. He hit hard. He moved fast. He did not care if he hurt people. In wrestling terms, he worked stiff. That means he hit with real force. It was not fake. It was not safe. It was reckless. It was dangerous. When you work stiff, you are putting your opponent at risk. You are prioritizing how the move looks over the safety of the other person. Most veterans hate working with stiff workers. It shows a lack of respect. It shows a lack of skill. When Warrior and Andre were booked to wrestle each other on house shows across the country, it became a problem. The matches were supposed to be simple. Warrior would run at Andre. He would hit him with clotheslines. A clothesline is when you extend your arm and hit someone in the chest or neck. Andre would tie himself up in the ropes to rest. It was a standard formula. The crowd would see Warrior's speed against Andre's size. It worked, but Warrior did not stick to the formula. He ran full speed and smashed his forearm into Andre's chest and neck with reckless force. For a man in Andre's condition, that was not just annoying, it was painful. Every stiff clothesline sent shockwaves of pain through his damaged spine. It made Andre's already terrible pain even worse. Andre tried to talk to Warrior. He told him to ease up. He explained that Warrior did not need to hit him that hard to make it look real. Andre knew how to sell. Selling means acting like a move hurts, even if it does not actually hurt. Andre was a master at selling. He could make a light tap look like a knockout punch. He tried to teach Warrior this, but Warrior ignored him. Bobby Heenan was Andre's manager. Heenan was there. He watched it happen. He saw Warrior ignore Andre's advice. Heenan later called Warrior an egomaniac. He said Warrior was a pain in the back. He said Warrior thought he knew better than everyone else. Warrior refused to listen to a living legend. That was a huge mistake. When you are a young wrestler and a legend like Andre the Giant tells you to do something, you do it. You do not argue. You do not ignore him. But Warrior did. He kept working stiff. He kept hitting Andre hard. And Andre decided to teach him a lesson. When words did not work, Andre used his fists. In wrestling, when someone is working too rough, you give them a receipt. A receipt is a real punch or a real move to teach them a lesson. It is a way of saying you are not going to tolerate being hurt. It is the locker room's way of policing itself. One night, Warrior charged at Andre for his running clothesline. He came at full speed like always. But this time, Andre did not take the move. He did not prepare to bump. A bump is when you fall down to make a move look good. Andre did not do that. Instead, Andre stood still. He planted his feet. He turned his body. He put his fist up. He made himself into a brick wall. Warrior ran straight into it. Heenan said it was like watching someone run into a wall. Andre's fist connected with Warrior's face. It was a real punch. It had real force behind it. Warrior dropped like a rock. He was knocked senseless. He fell to the mat in a heap. The crowd saw the invincible superhero crumble. They did not know what happened. They thought it was part of the match, but it was not. It was Andre taking control. It was Andre teaching Warrior a lesson. WWE's agents could not stop Warrior from working stiff. The road agents are the people who help plan the matches. They are supposed to make sure the wrestlers are safe, but they had no power over Warrior. He did not listen to them. Only Andre could stop him, and Andre did it with one punch. Andre also had another way to control Warrior. He would knock Warrior down to the mat. Then Andre would step on Warrior's long hair. Warrior had very long hair. It hung down past his shoulders. It was part of his look. Andre used it against him. Andre weighed 500 pounds. When he stepped on Warrior's hair with his massive boot, it pinned Warrior's hair to the canvas. Warrior could not lift his head. If he tried, he would rip his own scalp. It would hurt too much, so he was stuck. He had to lie there and stare up at Andre. He was completely helpless. Andre would stand there for a long time. Sometimes he would stand there for 30 seconds, sometimes a minute. He forced Warrior to slow down. He forced Warrior to wrestle at Andre's pace. He forced Warrior to stop being reckless. It was humiliating for Warrior. Here he was, this big, strong superhero, pinned to the mat by his own hair. The third time WWE lost control was in 1996. Warrior had been gone for years. He left in 1992 after a steroid scandal. The whole wrestling industry was under fire. The government was investigating steroid use. WWE had to clean up its image. Warrior left during that time. WWE moved on without him. They built new stars. Bret Hart became the top guy. Shawn Michaels became the top guy. The business changed. But by 1996, WWE was struggling. A rival company called WCW was beating them in the ratings. WCW had Hulk Hogan. They had Randy Savage. They were winning the Monday Night War. Vince McMahon needed star power. He needed something to compete, so he brought Warrior back. It seemed like a good idea at first. Fans were excited. The Ultimate Warrior was back. It felt like the old days. Warrior returned at WrestleMania 12. He beat a young wrestler named Hunter Hearst Helmsley in seconds. Helmsley would later become Triple H, one of the biggest stars in WWE history. But at the time, he was still climbing the ladder. Warrior destroyed him in a squash match. A squash match is when one wrestler wins very quickly and easily. It makes the winner look strong. It makes the loser look weak. Warrior looked very strong, but behind the scenes, people were angry. They thought Warrior was burying the future stars just to boost his own ego. They thought he was being selfish again. Warrior also had a new contract. This one was different from his old contracts. He had negotiated hard. He had learned from 1991. He had the rights to do outside business. He was starting a comic book company. The comic was about a character named Warrior. It was his character, not WWE's character. He was also opening a wrestling school. He called it Warrior University. He was going to train the next generation of wrestlers. He was very protective of his intellectual property. Intellectual property means the things you own creative, like your name, like your catchphrases, like your character. Warrior made sure WWE knew the difference between their stuff and his stuff. He owned the Warrior name. He had legally changed his name to Warrior in 1993, so the name was his. He owned the Always Believe slogan. That was his. WWE owned Feel the Power. That was theirs. Warrior wanted to make sure WWE did not steal from him. He did not trust them. And based on what happened in 1991, he had good reason not to trust them. Vince and WWE said Warrior had not seen his father in over 10 years. They said Warrior was estranged from Tom Helwig. Estranged means you are not close. You do not talk. You do not have a relationship. WWE claimed Warrior had not spoken to his father in a decade. They claimed Warrior did not care much for his dad. They said Warrior had told people in the locker room that he and his father did not get along. WWE's story was that Warrior was using his father's death as an excuse. They thought he was really skipping shows to work on his comic books, or to protest the merchandise dispute, or just because he did not feel like working. They thought it was kayfabe for the real world. Kayfabe means the fake storylines in wrestling. WWE was saying Warrior was using a real death to create a fake excuse. This became a public fight. WWE was fact-checking Warrior's grief in real time. They were telling the world that Warrior was lying about his own father. They were saying he was faking his sadness. It was brutal. It was mean. It was also very public. At the shows in Detroit and Pittsburgh, Vince went on the microphone. He had to explain to the crowd why Warrior was not there. Instead of just saying Warrior was unable to compete, Vince buried him. Vince told the crowds that Warrior refuses to wrestle in a city like this. He made it sound like Warrior thought he was too good for Detroit, too good for Pittsburgh. Vince turned the hero into a villain. He made the fans hate Warrior. It was a tactical move. Vince was deflecting the blame. Instead of WWE looking bad for not having Warrior there, Warrior looked bad for not showing up. The fans booed. They felt disrespected. Vince accomplished his goal. He protected WWE's image by destroying Warrior's image. The standoff ended the only way it could. Warrior was fired again. Just months after his celebrated return, he was gone. The big comeback was over. WWE was left scrambling to fill his spot on the card. At a pay-per-view called In Your House 9, International Incident, Warrior was scheduled to be part of a 6-man tag team match. A tag team match is when multiple wrestlers team up. 6-man means 3 on each side. Warrior was supposed to be on one team. When he did not show up, WWE had to replace him. They put in a wrestler named Psycho Sid. The whole storyline had to be rewritten. The whole match had to be changed. It was a mess, but WWE did it. They moved on without Warrior again, but this time the story did not not end with the firing. Warrior was not going to just go away. He sued WWE. He took them to court. He hired lawyers. He fought back. And unlike many wrestlers who went up against Vince McMahon's legal team, Warrior won. The lawsuit confirmed that Warrior owned the rights to his character. That was huge. In wrestling, the promoter usually owns everything. If you wrestle as the Ultimate Warrior, the company owns that name. They own the look. They own the character. You are just playing a role. But Warrior had protected himself. Because he legally changed his name to Warrior in 1993, the name was his, not WWE's. The character was his, not WWE's. The lawsuit made that official. WWE could not use the Warrior name without his permission. WWE could not use his likeness without his permission. Warrior had won a major victory. He took the character to WCW in 1998. He wrestled there as the Warrior. WWE could not stop him. They had no legal ground to stand on. Warrior had beaten them. The fourth time WWE lost control of Warrior was about creativity. It was about the promos. A promo is a speech wrestlers give to hype up a match. In the old days, promos were how you sold tickets. If you could talk, you could draw money. Guys like Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes were masters. They could make you believe anything they said. They could make you want to see the match. Warrior was famous for his wild promos. He screamed, he rambled, he said strange things. He talked about the gods. He talked about destiny. He shook the ropes while he talked. His intensity was off the charts. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes it was too much. But one promo went too far. It became famous for being completely insane. This was the plane crash promo. It happened during the build to WrestleMania 6. Warrior was supposed to hype his match with Hulk Hogan. The match was for the WWE Championship. It was supposed to be the biggest match of Warrior's career. He needed to make people want to see it. Instead, he delivered a promo that left everyone confused and scared. In the 1980s WWF, wrestlers did not use scripts for promos. They were not given exact words to say. They got bullet points. The agents would say, mention the date, mention the opponent, mention the venue, and sell the match. Then the wrestlers could say whatever they wanted. This freedom worked great for guys who knew how to talk. Guys like Ric Flair could improvise for 10 minutes and make it all make sense. They knew how to build to a point. They knew how to create drama, but for Warrior, this freedom was a disaster. Warrior's character was already weird. He talked about destiny in the heavens. He said he was from parts unknown. Nobody knew where that was. It was not a real place. He was supposed to sound mystical. He was supposed to sound like a warrior from another dimension. But in this promo, he did not sound mystical. He sounded like he was having a breakdown. He sounded genuinely unhinged. Warrior started by telling Hogan to load the spaceship with the rocket fuel. That was strange, but maybe it was a metaphor. Then he told Hogan to load it with the Warriors. Okay, still weird, but maybe it made sense in Warrior's head. He was always talking in metaphors. But then he said something shocking. He told Hogan to shove the controls into a nosedive. He told Hogan to crash the plane. He said it multiple times. Crash the plane, Hulk Hogan. He said Hogan must self-destruct. He said Hogan needed to self-destruct to know who the chosen one was. Then Warrior said he was not the chosen one. He said he was the only one. The whole thing was terrifying. It was not a promo about a wrestling match. It was a rant about suicide and destruction. It was violent. It was dark. It did not make sense. Normal wrestling promos are about how you are going to beat your opponent. You talk about your strength. You talk about your skill. You maybe insult the other guy. You build drama. You make people excited. But Warrior was telling Hogan to kill himself in a plane crash. That is not normal. That is disturbing. Backstage, the production crew was lost. Gorilla Monsoon was a commentator. He was a smart guy. He had been in wrestling for decades. He knew how the business worked, but even he did not know what to make of this promo. He looked at the other producers. Nobody knew what to do. They could not edit the promo. It was being filmed live to tape. It was going to air on TV. They could not cut it because it was the main promo for the main event of WrestleMania, but it was also too long and too weird to make sense of. Warrior had gone so deep into his character that he forgot he was supposed to sell a wrestling match. Instead, he sold madness. He sold chaos. He sold fear. The promo did not make people want to see Warrior wrestle Hogan. It made people wonder if Warrior was okay. It made people wonder if he was dangerous. The plane crash promo became famous for all the wrong reasons. For years, people talked about it. They called it the craziest promo ever. They called it proof that Warrior was insane. In 2005, WWE released a DVD called The Self-Destruction of the Ultimate Warrior. It was a documentary about Warrior's career. But it was not a celebration. It was a hit piece. WWE personnel sat down for interviews. They mocked Warrior. They called him crazy. They called him unprofessional. They said he was impossible to work with, and they used the plane crash promo as their main evidence. They showed the clip over and over. They laughed at it. They said Warrior was on a frequency nobody else could hear. They said you could not build a storyline around him because he did not make sense. They said he was operating in his own reality. The DVD was WWE's way of burying Warrior. They wanted to make sure everyone knew that Warrior was the problem, not them. Warrior was the one who was unstable. Warrior was the one who could not be controlled. The fifth and final way WWE lost control of Warrior was in public. Warrior was supposed to be a role model. He was a hero to millions of kids. WWE marketed him that way. They sold Warrior toys. They sold Warrior t-shirts. They made Warrior the face of the company alongside Hogan. Kids wanted to be like Warrior. They wanted to run fast and be strong and paint their faces. But in real life, Warrior did not act like a hero. He acted like someone who did not care about the fans. There are multiple stories of Warrior being cruel to fans. The most famous story involves a sick child. The story was told by Bret Hart. Bret was another WWE star. He was one of the best technical wrestlers in the world. He took his job very seriously. He believed wrestlers had a responsibility to the fans. He believed they should be good people. According to Bret, a terminally ill child came to a WWE show backstage. Terminally ill means the child was dying. The kid did not have much time left. The kid was there to meet the Ultimate Warrior. It might have been a Make-A-Wish situation. Make-A-Wish is a charity that grants wishes to dying children. This child's hero was Warrior. The kid was dressed like Warrior. He had face paint on. He had tassels on his arms. He had a Warrior t-shirt. He was so excited. This was his dream, but Warrior did not come out to meet him. Bret said other wrestlers stopped to talk to the kid. They signed autographs. They took pictures. They made the kid feel special. But Warrior stayed in his dressing room. WWE PR people asked Warrior to come out. Bret claims Warrior said, "Can it freaking wait? I'm busy." Or he just ignored them completely. He refused to come out. Bret said the family was moved to a different part of the arena so they would not get in Warrior's way during his entrance. Bret was disgusted. He called Warrior a coward and a phony hero. There is another story about a kid and an autograph. Warrior was at an airport. A kid came up to him and asked for an autograph. Warrior said no. He walked away. The kid was crushed. But this was not just any kid. The kid turned out to be the son of a high-ranking TV executive. That executive station carried WWE programming. When the executive found out that Warrior had blown off his kid, he was furious. He threatened to drop WWE from his station. That would have cost WWE money and exposure. To save the relationship, Vince forced Warrior to record a videotaped apology to the child. Warrior hated it. He felt his privacy was being invaded, but Vince made him do it anyway. Years after Warrior left WWE, he proved he was still a PR nightmare. In 2005, Warrior was invited to speak at the University of Connecticut. He was invited by the Young Republicans. By 2005, Warrior had reinvented himself as a conservative speaker. He had a blog. He gave speeches. But the speech at UConn was a disaster. Warrior went on a rant. He criticized multiculturalism and tolerance. He used the word queering. He said queers were ruining the country. He attacked the LGBTQ community. Students were shocked. Many of them walked out of the lecture hall. During the question and answer session, a student asked Warrior a question. Warrior's response was brutal. He told the student to take a pill and get over it. Some reports say he said, "Don't have a disease you can't afford." He mocked the idea of complaining about being sick. This was especially gross because Warrior himself was rumored to have used steroids. Many wrestlers have died young because of steroid use. For Warrior to mock someone's health was seen as disgusting. The UConn incident made national news. Warrior was painted as a hate monger. Even though he was not under WWE contract in 2005, people still associated him with the company. The bad press reflected on WWE. It made them look bad for ever having him as a hero. The timing was interesting too. The bad press from UConn happened right around the same time WWE released the Self-Destruction DVD. Even in retirement, Warrior was damaging WWE's image. WWE could not stop him from saying terrible things, and those terrible things reflected back on them. So what does it all mean? The Ultimate Warrior was one of the biggest stars WWE ever had. He was a main event wrestler. He was a champion. He sold millions of dollars in merchandise. But he was also one of the most uncontrollable people in wrestling history. Vince McMahon built his empire on control. He controlled the stories. He controlled the characters. He controlled the money. But he could not not control Jim Hellwig. At SummerSlam 1991, Warrior held Vince hostage with a letter. He got what he wanted for one night, then was fired. With Andre the Giant, Warrior worked too stiff and got punched in the face for it. Andre stepped on his hair to control him. WWE's agents had no power. Only the Giant did. In 1996, Warrior disappeared. He said his father died. WWE said he was lying. They fired him. He sued them and won. He kept the rights to his name and character. With his promos, Warrior went off the rails. He told Hogan to crash a plane and self-destruct. Nobody knew what he was talking about. WWE had no creative control, and with fans and public speeches, Warrior destroyed his own reputation. He refused to meet sick kids. He gave hateful speeches at colleges. He hurt WWE's image even when he was not working for them. Each of these moments shows a different kind of chaos. Financial chaos, physical chaos, legal chaos, creative chaos, reputational chaos. Warrior caused all of it. For years, WWE painted Warrior as crazy and selfish. Their DVD made him look like a villain, but the truth is more complicated. Warrior knew his value. He protected his character. He refused to bow to the locker room hierarchy. Some of his behavior was unprofessional. Some of his views were ugly, but he was also a product of the system WWE created. They built him into a superhero. They marketed him as the ultimate warrior. They made him believe he was special. Then they were shocked when he acted like he was special. The Ultimate Warrior lost it because he could not separate the myth from the man. He became the character so completely that he forgot how to be Jim Hellwig. The character took over his life. He legally changed his name to Warrior. He started to believe his own hype. He thought the rules did not apply to him, and in some ways he was right. He got his money at SummerSlam, even if it got him fired. He beat WWE in court and kept his name. He said whatever he wanted in promos. He treated fans however he wanted. He gave speeches that got him hated, and through it all, WWE could not stop him. They could fire him, they could bury him, they could make DVDs mocking him, but they could not control him. That made him the one thing WWE feared most. He was a reality they could not script. He was a star who cut his own strings. And that is why the story of the Ultimate Warrior is not just about a wrestler. It is a story about what happens when the system loses control of the monster it created.